A very, very good afternoon. Happy National Heritage Day. Well, yesterday, but celebrated today as well. And welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows. I trust it has been a good weekend. Highlighted or not by the rugby on Saturday. Ron Rutland, who I spent some time with in London and then Paris as my cycling partner to get to the start of the Rugby World Cup, sent me a message from the stadium after the game on Saturday to say it's the least disappointed he's ever been by a Springbok defeat, simply because it was such an immense game of rugby. And as disappointing as a defeat always is, it was special to be part of such a thunderous game of the World Cup by some distance so far, and one that certainly has Ireland as favourites but does not rule out the Springboks. Plenty of rugby still to come, and that makes today's show rather appropriate, because joining me in just a moment will be a Brandy entrepreneur who's played a little rugby in his time, John Smit and Avante Brandy. I thought Brandy over Heritage Weekend, as such a big part of our South African heritage, would be an appropriate platform, and John's brand is getting a lot of attention at the moment and getting a lot of people interested in talking. So we thought we'd find out a bit more about it and find out how John got involved, and maybe share a wine story or two with the 2007 Rugby World Cup winning captain. So that's coming up. John Smit, my very special guest on today's show, and he'll be joining me in just a moment. Before we talk wine, rugby, and a very exciting new brand of brandy, let's have a quick look at news from the world of wine. Brunches and potluck club starting at the end of the month. In fact, I think the first one might actually have been yesterday. I have to double check that, but get on the potluck's website down in Cape Town. And it is Luke Dale Roberts showing his usual Asian and spud. As bad as the issues down in Cape Town, though. If we can get back on and get back into Ronaldo. Right, that's Potluck Club and the Sunday brunch. I hope you caught most of that. That's now underway. Luke Dale Roberts with great food. Then over to Alto, and this is an estate I visited years ago. Mark Bilton has now sold his wine, his vineyards. He'll keep the wine, he'll keep the label, but the vineyards, I think it's about 58 hectares or thereabouts, will now be part of Alto, and that's an important acquisition in the Helderberg, where the production of red wine in particular is just so exceptional. So big moment for Alto, who themselves are under reasonably new ownership, the same group that has Ernie Els and Stellenzacht. And so that is adding some really nice Helderberg property to Alto and building on what is already one of South Africa's most iconic wine estates. So exciting times ahead for Alto. We've also got a new cellar being built. We hope to be down there in the near future to have a look. And then these are videos. It's not been an easy weekend down in the Cape for our wine estates and our wine farms. This is the devastation in everywhere from Franschhoek through to the Helderberg. I think in the Breda River area, there was 120 mils of rain in just a few hours at one point. The R320 around Hemelanada has been closed. Roads through Franschhoek have been closed. Roads around Elgin closed. There have been trees down. There's been power out. People stranded in the Villiersdorp area. You can just see the sheer volume of water hammering down through. That's Franschhoek earlier today. I think this was also in Franschhoek. Just so much rain coming down, coupled with a fair amount of wind as well. So a lot of wine estates have been closed over the course of this weekend. I think as early as Friday, there was a note from Ataraxia saying that they were planning to be closed on Saturday and Sunday, and that has indeed come to fruition. And all the way through the winelands, Stellenbosch as well, there is a lot of mopping up to be done. And a lot of devastation. There's the actual vineyards. Luckily, it's not harvest time. I see they're experiencing similar rains in parts of Napa and Oregon and Washington State at the moment. They're in the middle of harvest, so that is not going to be helpful at all. It's always good to get rain, but not quite in this volume. And yet another crazy weather event affecting the world and affecting our wine estates. So thinking of everybody involved there and hoping that they will bounce back nice and quickly. Also needing to bounce back, South Africa after Sunday and the game against Ireland. It was a monumental game of rugby, one that would have had a few bruised players the next day because they held nothing back on Saturday night in Paris. Watching that game, our special correspondent for Dan Really Likes Wine, also happens to have one of the coolest brandies on the market at the moment, is John Smit. Bonjour, Monsieur Smit. Bienvenue on Dan Really Likes Wine. And welcome back after a weekend in Paris. You've seen and played in rather a lot of games of rugby. But even by your standards, Saturday must have been a pretty special one.
It was quite a special weekend, I must say. I pretty much feel the same way Ron Rutland does. I was fortunate enough to be there, and it was, if I tell you, just under 79,000 people. I'm guessing 60,000 were Irish, and they came in singing, and they sang through the 80 minutes, and they sang after the game, and they sang on the way home. It was just incredible. It was some test match as well. It could have gone either way, and obviously just missing out by a couple of points isn't the worst thing in the world. Well, it's not just, it doesn't knock us out, but it does mean that we do have a marker set in the World Cup as it stands with Ireland. I think I've now won 24 out of 26 games in the last 2 or 3 years, so that's some stat.
It's a terrific game of rugby, and lovely to be able to experience a few there at the game, and still a lot of rugby still to come. What about the broader French experience? We've actually bumped into each other already at this World Cup in France. You've spent a bit of time there. There's more time to come for you. That broader French experience, not just the rugby, but the food, the wine, the culture. I get the sense it's one that quite appeals to John Smit.
It is an amazing place to go and watch rugby. I will say this: the actual rugby experience is difficult. I think logistically, France they do it is a mission. You got to be a little bit patient getting in and getting out of the stadiums. So that's the one thing. But the flip side is you get to go to places like Bordeaux, like Marseille, in Paris, and there's some phenomenal wine to be tasted all over the place. The food is amazing. And the vibe is incredible. Everywhere you go, the bistros and cafes and people sitting on the side of the streets, and the weather's been phenomenal as well. So as long as you're a little bit patient around the actual game experience, the rest is sublime.
Which almost makes it, in some ways, a better way for somebody like you to do the World Cup, because in 2007, yes, you came away with a life-changing victory, but you can't really spend quite the same amount of time taking in all the great food and tasting quite so much wine.
Look, physically, I almost didn't make it the last 7 weeks in 2007, but I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, if I had to be there for the entire 7 weeks with this group of ex-players hanging about, I don't think I'd physically make this 7 weeks either. So hence I'm in and out every weekend, Dan.
A wise man. Before we have a chat about this new brandy that's got so many people so excited, some of the memories that you take back from your time in France, away from the rugby field, some of the people you spent time with, some of the food and wine experiences in particular. Are there some that really stand out?
So we went and spent a season at Clermont-Ferrand, which is right in the centre. Certainly not one of the most flamboyant towns of France, but it had an amazing rugby team. And I think the only thing Roxy enjoyed was the fact that they had a one-star Michelin restaurant there. And so they are, I think France has the most Michelin star restaurants per capita in the world. And you do not have to go far to have a fine dining experience. And but the one that stands out would have been that restaurant, and the second would have been we got taken hunting on some farm, and they'd prepared a whole bunch of frog's legs for us, and so a lot of the South Africans sort of were a bit hesitant. But I tell you what, I haven't enjoyed a Chardonnay with a frog's legs like that anywhere in the world. There was just something spectacular. So any chance I get now, I try and see where I can find some good frog's legs.
Is that genuine? You found a love. You'll happily eat frog's legs.
Absolutely. Well, done the way they were done on that farm, they are insanely good. Just look, let me tell you this much: it does take a significantly large amount of frog's legs to appease my appetite, as opposed to chicken.
A lot of frogs sacrificed for a very, very good. This is Q-Bar Rosebank in Johannesburg. And this is Q-Bar in the heart of Stellenbosch. And one of these two will be the venue for you and a friend for an unforgettable evening if you win this month's competition with Norman Goodfellows. You'll be treated to welcome bubbles and incredible wine tasting with the world-class sommeliers at both Q-Bars. And you'll also have either a cheese platter in Stellenbosch or a sushi platter in Johannesburg, and membership of the exclusive Coin Rock Members Club. And all you have to do to win this incredible prize during the month of... All right, there we go. Apologies for that. I suspect it might be something to do with my children, both watching videos on a public holiday on the Wi-Fi at the same time. We hopefully sorted that out. We were talking just before we lost you there to John Smit about pairing Chardonnay and frog's legs and brandy. Might that be an alternative instead? Because brandy is something I think John Smit has always had a fondness for, but now a particular interest because added to the list of adventures that you've had through this remarkable career of yours, John, from restoring cars to running large rugby teams to now your part-time job as a security guard. You've brought in a brandy to the life of John Smit. Tell me about Avante and how that story came about.
Yeah, it's been actually quite a lot of fun so far, and I suppose it's still early days, but the whole idea came about in chatting to Rob Haynes, who's based in the Cape, and he did something similar with gin a while back, and we just thought the timing was absolutely perfect with World Cup around the corner, and we wanted to do things a little bit differently. So it's actually not just me; it's actually a team. So we've found a team of 15 ex-players and current players, and all of those that are sort of keen on investing into an idea that's going to be, I guess, started and born out of a Rugby World Cup in France, and I think probably the best timing and the best place in Cape Town is probably got the most underrated brandy in the world, and so we look. I think we've really put something really special together. I think the criteria was more around what it tasted with the likes of brand with a Coke and ginger ale versus what it tasted like on ice. But I've tasted it in all three formats, and I can tell you it certainly does. It does pass the test. So it really has been a culmination of good timing, good people, and certainly it's an easy product to market and highlight in South Africa. But the idea is to really make this the first Cape brandy that does go global.
Tell me a bit about what makes the brandy good for you. You're someone who will have had the occasional brandy over the years, celebrating a great performance or a great win. Why does it strike you as being something that's really good to drink?
So here, there's a lot of brands of brandy, and you can get from very cheap to very expensive. You get your VSOPs, you get your XOs, you get the bottle that's going to cost you $120 that you need to throw as much Coke and ice into as possible. There's a massive variation, and I think what we wanted to do was certainly not start at the bottom. We wanted something that was pretty classy, but that wouldn't taste like a cognac. Like whenever some South African goes overseas and tries to order a brandy and Coke, he gets a cognac and Coke, and it just tastes so sweet. It just doesn't taste right. So we needed a premium liquid that tasted brilliant in all formats, on ice, without ice, whether it was with a cigar at a lounge or whether it was at a braai with a Coke. We needed it to suit all formats, and that was the criteria, which you can imagine is the terms of the team of 15 that's gotten involved in this brandy. There's no surprises as to which format they prefer most.
So I'm sensing quite a lot of research went into this, John, and you're part of the team.
I'm 45 now, so only about. I mean, if my mother's watching this, I better say only 18 years, 20 years.
What about the rest of this team? Because I've seen you've done a number of broadcasts, you've chatted to a number of people. There are some rather well-known rugby luminaries as well as yourself as part of this.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing about rugby. And I mean, I've still got to get back to France and catch up with some of these guys. But we've got this WhatsApp group that's called Still Think We Have It, Rugby World Cup 23. But it is a whole bunch of guys that used to smash each other up when we played against each other. Now we're the best of friends, waiting to find venues for lunch and where to have a drink after a game. And the camaraderie has just been amazing. And so amongst that lot, I've really become good friends with Justin Marshall and George Griggin and Jim Hamilton, and so that's been one of the reasons in Wasela Sarevi to bring in these guys and give them an opportunity to help us take this Cape made brandy into the world.
And you also obviously think that there is going to be a market for this around the world, not just because of the quality, but because there are people who drink brandy. We know that the brandy drinking culture is very strong in South Africa. Have you found something similar in other parts of the world? Do people embrace brandy with a similar enthusiasm in the places you've traveled to with rugby?
Look, everywhere you go where there's some kind of South African expat community, you will find a brandy and Coke, but it will be an imported brandy from South Africa. So no, the culture isn't big just yet, but I think it is. Cognac drinking is something that is quite big, and I think that is where this brand also fits into as well. So I think we really hope that this could be the brand that does, I guess, transcend cognac drinkers from Europe and Australia and America into understanding that there's more that can be done with the brandy.
And how has it opened up your eyes to brandy? Because it's one thing to have an enjoyment of something, but to really understand the process, how it's made, how it comes together. Have you been on that journey now with Avante?
Similar to wine, Dan, it's a fascinating process. And if you think about it, there's so many similarities in a distillery as there are in a vineyard. And obviously a lot of crossovers as well. So like with any good wine, it takes a bit of knowledge from a winemaker. It takes a great grape, and it takes a great process and some patience as well. So I found the two very, very similar, and hence it is a bit of a work of art, So to bash out a quick brandy is pretty easy, but to make something special, I guess, is like producing a wine that someone keeps coming back for.
And there are many people who seem to be doing that because it has kicked off. At least that is my perception. I'm seeing a lot of talk about the brand, a lot of interest in it. What is the reality? Is it catching fire? Is it taking off faster than expected?
We did put out a pre-sale, and it's actually ended last night, I think, which went beyond our expectations. So the uptake and the interest, and again, I'll name them because I guess they're a big part of this show. But Norman Goodfellows they were quick to the start line and very happy to jump aboard this journey with us. So we've been very, very grateful for the interest so far, Dan.
Well, I'm very, very glad to hear it. It's just the beginning of the journey, and although it's kicked off well, there is still a long way to go, which means, John, you're going to have a lot more of the brandy just to help it along, as I'm sure you will. In terms of who you'd be sitting down, and I remember asking a similar question about wine, but from your teammates, the guys you've played against, who would be the preferred partners to sit down and really enjoy an Avante or two with?
I can tell you there's quite a long list of those guys. Many of the Cape guys are obviously notoriously wine drinkers, but I can tell you after 2 or 3 glasses, they go from a wine to ordering a brandy wine with some Coke. So Dion Carstens would probably be the best candidate. He's a good value over a brandy and Coke. Butchie James, very valuable. He's also part of Avante as well. And I think specifically purely because it's a brandy. But I can tell you, Dan, the reality is I've had a brand with pretty much every guy I've ever played with. And I can't say I've ever met someone that doesn't enjoy it. So there's a long list out there, Dan.
What about the guys from kind of a generation two back, the guys who would not be immune to a brandy and Coke at half time of a game of rugby when it was a little more old school in its execution? Who are the John Smit rugby heroes who, in an ideal world, you'd love to have shared 1 or 2 with?
Man, I reckon that the tight head from at the time known as Eastern Province, Domkrach, was just a killer of a man. I think he was a guy from Dispatch as well, but he looked like a guy that I think would have been really good fun around a table with a few scarp choppies and the odd brandy and Coke.
And that kicks off what is a very, very long list indeed. And then, of course, there are the current guys. The team are very focused at the moment, but will ideally have, fingers crossed, celebrations to be had towards the end of the World Cup. What were your celebrations like, John, when you won in 2007?
They were, in the beginning, quite mediocre. I mean, we were quite sort of still shell-shocked, but the more the reality set in, Dan, the more we abused that William Webb Ellis trophy from beer to champagne to brandy and Coke to whatever we could put inside of it. So it was a long night that went all the way until 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock the next morning. Then we went on to the Champs-Élysées to receive the trophy again. From there onto a flight that we drank, a British Airways flight, absolutely dry, and to a packed Oliver Tambo. So I got to tell you, it's probably the longest party I've ever been a part of in my life.
So you would be an excellent technical director for a World Cup final celebration should the Springboks have another one this year. Who, to your knowledge, is probably leading that charge should we win and should we need to have another Parisian World Cup celebration?
I do know that I can mock as many ex-players as possible, but I have had quite a few brandies of quite a few of this crew that we have at the moment, and they're good fun, but I would never name and shame. As you well know, Dan, loose lips sink ships.
Very true, and an unfair question, which is withdrawn. My apologies, but they will be having a great time should they win it. But will they? And I remember, I think I mentioned on Twitter X earlier today or yesterday when I came out of the stadium in Tokyo 4 years ago, having lost to the All Blacks. I had a feeling that we could definitely still win the Rugby World Cup, that loss notwithstanding. And I get that feeling after Saturday night. Yes, we lost the game, but it wasn't one that made me think we didn't have a chance of winning the tournament. Is that your feeling? Do you think this is still very much a World Cup that the Boks can look to win?
I just found the whole 80 minutes quite weird. We chose a 7-1 split and then never drove a line out in the first 50-odd, 60-odd minutes. First ball we received, the first thing we did was pass it wide as fast as we could, which is something we've never, ever done. It was... We played off the top of the line out more often than not. We did far more sort of plays around the line. It's almost like we chose a 7-1, but we didn't actually use the 7-1. Long range kicks, we've never seen them for the last 6 weeks. So it's just the most bizarre. It's almost like they've decided these were the 4 things that they were going to do, and that they believed they could win the game on that. And if they didn't, they would save the rest for the rest of the tournament. But fair play, the Irish were unbelievably good. They were the deserved winners on the day. And I think that gut feeling stems from the fact that you see how the Irish celebrated a pool win against South Africa. That for me is a sign that they might have sort of had their best performance. And I know for a fact we haven't seen the best out of our guys yet. So yes, I'm still very quietly optimistic.
All right, good to have that sentiment. I think it's one that many of us do share. There's possibly France without Dupont in the quarterfinal. There are still some other teams floating about. Australia, not one of them, and that's really, really, really sad news. If it is back, are you expecting an Ireland-South Africa repeat of the final?
Look, all things going well. We have to hope that is the case, because I can't. Yeah, look, the reality is the 2 teams that played possibly the best Rugby World Cup pool game of all time, ranked 1 and 2, could still not make it to the quarterfinals, having to play France and the All Blacks respectively. But I just do think that game showed a very different level to all the other games we've seen so far. So it does look like it's a high probability that we might see them again.
All right. Still a way to go. Still plenty of rugby to come. One more game of South Africa next weekend, the game against Tonga. And there will be some of you, I'm sure, who are getting over at some point if they haven't already. Just before we do wrap up, John, your recommendations to the rugby tourist who's going over to visit France to spend some time there, who hasn't been before. What's important to get the quintessential French experience for you, other than the obvious frog's legs?
So if you've got a lot of time, catch the train, go to as many places, go to Versailles, go to all the sites. If you don't have time, jump on the bus, jump on the tour bus, the pop-on, pop-off bus. That is possibly the best way to see all of the sites in and around Paris. But definitely don't get stuck in the pub for all the time. Leave the pub for the night time and get as much of France in during the day as possible.
That's a very good way of doing it. It's exactly what we did on this particular trip. And there is just so much to enjoy alongside of the rugby. And it's rugby that culminates on the 28th of October. And as such, we're going to be doing something a little special through the month of October for one very special person, John. If they are purchasing some Avante whiskey over the month of October, they're going to be able to hang out with the 2 of us just before the Rugby World Cup final.
Beautiful. What a prize.
All right, so we'll send you the details on that. It'll be John and myself and a group of you with some Avante Brandy celebrating. Ideally a Springbok win. I'll ask you for a different prediction, though, just before we say goodbye with thanks. And that's Avante Brandy. Next World Cup, 4 years' time. Be a good time to reassess where you are. Ideal world, what is the Avante story in 2027?
4 years is a good number to be able to give yourself the time to judge whereabouts we've got. In 4 years' time, I'd like us to be really established and putting pressure on some of the big labels and hopefully have disrupted the market by then, Dan.
All right, well, they're off to a good start. If you haven't tried it yet, Avante is available at Norman Goodfellows, and it will be with the added bonus of that great prize. One of you will be able to win a chance for a video call with myself and John ahead of the Rugby World Cup final, glass of Avante in hand. And we're really excited to be able to do that with you. Barney, thank you. I know you've got plenty more travels, only back today and off again soon to France, I'm sure. Enjoy those travels, enjoy the rugby, and good luck with the new brand. It's genuinely exciting. You've got a pretty cool team alongside of you. I'm sure it's going to be yet another John Smit success story, so thank you.
Thank you, Danielson, and thanks everyone. If you guys do get to sample it and you like it or don't like it, let me know. Looking forward to it. Cheers, everyone.
John Smit, World Cup winning rugby captain, and now the head of the team that is taking Avante to the market around the world. Lots of very cool rugby players in it, and you'll be able to join John just before the Rugby World Cup final with a glass of Avante and the chance to preview that and celebrate with one of the rugby icons of the modern era. That wraps us up for today. Short, sharp, and indulgent. In fact, I think there's an Avante waiting for me this evening to conclude the Heritage Weekend. Back again on Thursday. And Thursday, we throw forward to the Nedbank Cape Winemakers Guild, where we will have 4 of the guild members with us. Riani Stradham, who's just joined Cavalli, Erica Obermeyer, John Loebscher making the Silverthorn Bubbles up in Robertson, and Barto Ekstern. Has there been a greater exponent of Sauvignon Blanc in South Africa? All 4 guild members talking to us about the auction and the importance of it and the work that is being done with the Cape Winemakers Guild Trust. So we'll see you on Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your public holiday. Big thank you to John Smit. And look out for Avante and Norman Goodfellows. And you could be catching up with us at the end of October. Have a great evening. We'll see you on Thursday. Goodbye.
This is Q-Bar Rosebank in Johannesburg. And this is Q-Bar in the heart of Stellenbosch. And one of these two will be the venue for you and a friend for an unforgettable evening if you win this month's competition with Norman Goodfellows. You'll be treated to welcome bubbles and incredible wine tasting with the world-class sommeliers at both Q-Bars. And you'll also have either a cheese platter in Stellenbosch or a sushi platter in Johannesburg, and membership of the exclusive Coin Rock Members Club. And all you have to do to win this incredible prize during the month of September, buy any bottle of either Coin Rock or Norhook wines, with Q-Bar being the home to both, and you'll go into the draw for that fabulous prize and a Q-Bar experience you'll never forget.